Hello, and welcome to the Media Copilot. It's a podcast that explores how AI is changing media, journalism, and content creation. I'm Pete Paschal, longtime tech journalist and founder of the Media Copilot, and I'm excited to bring you fascinating conversations with fellow journalists, media executives, and the people building how the business of news will work in the future. This week, I'm thrilled to welcome Michelle Songy, founder and CEO of Presshook. Michelle's had an interesting journey as an entrepreneur, going from working in finance in London to founding a fintech startup that was acquired by American Express, and now to reshaping how PR professionals and journalists connect in an AI-driven world. But our conversation goes far beyond just her company. Michelle brings a sharp perspective on how AI is transforming the delicate dance between public relations and journalism. We discuss the risks and opportunities of AI-powered tools and outreach, the challenges of avoiding spammy, impersonal communications, and how both journalists and PR pros can strike the right balance between efficiency and authenticity. Something I hear is pretty important. Be sure to listen to the end where Michelle shares her take on AI agents and her ambitious plans to take her venture to a whole new level. And if this conversation sparks your interest in how AI is reshaping PR work, I'd love for you to check out the Media Copilot's training course, AI for Media and PR Professionals. It's a 6-week course filled with hands-on, practical training designed to get PR and media pros leveraging AI tools to automate workflows, to craft strategies, and really just to work smarter and get more done. Trust me, if you work in media and you want to dive deeper into AI in 2025, this is your ticket. You can learn more about the course and sign up at mediacopilot.ai. All right, here's my conversation with Michelle Songy, CEO of Presshook, on AI, PR, and the future of media connections. Michelle, welcome to the Media Copilot.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, our pleasure, our pleasure. And so it's funny, I realized something right before you came on today.
Okay.
And so first of all, I know you're a founder and CEO, as I was just kind of saying in the intro. But one of the things I do through the Media Copilot is I teach AI and usually to creative teams, and frankly, usually to PR teams. There's a lot of PR and comms teams whom I've trained, and I've been doing the podcast pretty much since I started the company and the newsletter way back in the fall of 2023. But you're actually the first sort of PR person I know, like deeply connected to the PR industry person I've actually had on the show. So I wanted to just point that out. I don't know if congratulations are in order, but that's just an odd thing.
Interesting.
Um, but that means
It's
that's
about
given
time.
me, the thing is, it is about time because I think there's a lot to be said about, how AI is not just changing media, but the whole media ecosystem, and PR is a very strong part of that. I was on a panel at Consensus last year that talked a lot about, going direct with founders and like what's the state of PR these days. And there's a lot of different opinions on that. And I want yours. Like, now that there's been a lot, tech has affected PR in a lot of ways, and most recently with AI. It feels like, it's at I don't know if crossroads is the right word or a transformation or what have you, but what's your take? What's the state of PR today?
Yeah. And same with you. I started reading your newsletter because it was more media and AI focused, and that was sparked interest to me. And then I've seen this like crossover a lot more into your talk, how it like intersects with the PR world. So that's what's had me hooked on your newsletter for the past year.
Well, thank you.
But yeah, I've definitely seen noticed a big like resurgence, honestly, lately in PR. When I first started, and just to take it back, I don't come from the PR space. So I'm actually not
Mm.
your like long-term traditional publicist here.
Yeah, you're not a lifer.
I had a life before it. I was a tech
Mhm.
co-founder, have some gray hairs from that. And I actually just learned it. I had to learn it on the job because I was trying to, get PR get some press for my last startup, which is how I developed Presshook and saw, the struggles that brands have, especially startups getting PR. Especially a few years ago, it was like a very closed circuit. The media were very
Mm.
inaccessible. Agencies were so expensive. It was just like this this black box exclusive, hard to get into circle that you were trying to break into. And then I came at it as just seeing kind of like the struggles on both sides. And as you said, I think what really has helped me understand PR and and how best we can all do it at our maximum efficiency is just really understanding like the three parts of it, which is like you have to understand, have some experience doing PR, you have to be on a brand side and understand like why to do it, what's the value, and then also just understanding what it's like to be a journalist or a media producer and what content they're looking for. So I feel like it kind of takes like all the different views and roles that you've had in your career to kind of help you see like the full circle. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And so on the media side of it, yeah, like there's the content that they're looking to create is obviously, the thing, almost like almost the MacGuffin in the PR movie that everyone's trying to get to. But in the conversation that we had last year when we first met, you said something that stood out to me, and you said that you still believe in the power of media, which it was a great statement, I thought, because it sort of implies there might be a reason not to, these days. And whether that's, again, I'd ask you kind of what you were getting at there, but, there's a lot of challenges to media today, even putting aside the political factor that has been big the last little while. There's just, as a business and as an industry, it's been really, really challenged. So, why do you still believe in the power of media today? And again, how what is PR's role in that now that AI is affecting everything?
Yeah, that's a good question. On a personal statement, I mean, my last startup, I saw the power as in really, it was just that a lot of our clients and investors knew about our competitors and they didn't know who we were. So we
Mm,
just were like, how do we get them to find out about us? Like we needed more visibility, and it's one thing just to pay for an ad, but we wanted people actually like talking about us and to get that credibility and like stamp of approval. And I think that helped really put my last startup on the map and helped us eventually get acquired by a larger corporation that was looking for businesses like ours and seeing what the competition was like. So I had a dramatic moment where it completely changed my previous company, and that's definitely
interesting.
what turned me to.
Mm,
I understood the power, and that's kind of what turned me when I started, talking to other startups and brands and traveling and talking to small businesses. I saw them have the same difficulty and problem because it's very complex, it's very time consuming. But it's something
yeah,
kind of like at the end of the day, it was like, oh, that's something I know at night that has kept me up at night. Like I'm not doing it, but I should be.
yeah. Is there like more specific story there? Is there like a particular get that happened with your company that sort of turned things around, or was it less sudden than that? Was it more of a sustained kind of like we started paying attention to PR and started seeing some real conversation starting?
Yeah, well, when I first started doing it, because I thought I'm a founder, I do sales, I can figure out accounting, you figure out kind of every part of the business, but still,
Yeah,
to
tell me
founders, I
about
think
it.
PR is the last thing that they
Yeah.
actually take on. Because it's time consuming, because it's confusing. I tried it and I just failed. I mean, I wrote some journalists and no one got back to me. So it's like I'm not feel like I'm not doing right, or no one just cares about us.
I do feel
Um,
like every journalist should spend like almost like what you might call a semester, like a few months doing the nitty gritty hard work of pitching and PR. Because having done it now and having been in a similar situation, you have so much more sympathy for people on the other side of this, right? Because it's like,
yeah,
as a journalist, you're like, whatever, people want my attention. I write my stories that I want, and you sort of
yeah,
end up ignoring stuff. But there's just so much human power going on the other side. Yeah, I think I
exactly.
would have responded to more of those pitches had I had that outlook back in the day.
Yeah, but then it just so happened is as I was pitching them, I also started writing our own blog for our company. So I was writing content and trying to figure out how I would research the content that was going into my article. And then I just realized that, oh, the journalists, like, they need the content and easy access to it just as much as we
Right.
do. So I really felt like I don't know if you've ever driven on one of these. I did once in up north in Norway, but there's these two-way one-lane highways. And I just felt like
Mm.
that. Like we're just like all crossing paths and like And there was like no connection between us. Like I'm just throwing out emails, they're reading them, maybe not, and they're just looking for content in the same way.
Yeah.
So it actually was me starting to, you know, be and act like a journalist. Even today, we started our own publication. I have it on the side. It's kind of like a side hustle for me, but I love it because it just helps me think like a publication and what's important to them. And then it's helped us, craft better PR stories for our clients and ourselves, I think.
Nice. And so that sort of experience, that sort of insight sort of begat Press Hook and what you ended up doing there. And then tell me about that. Like what exactly is the differentiator? What's the service you're offering?
Sure. So yeah, so after we were acquired, I had a 2-year earnout with American Express, and then during that, I think it was as an entrepreneur, you have a lot of ideas, but sometimes they actually stick, and then you can't stop thinking of them. That's kind of when you
Hmm.
start just building it all, one night. All of a sudden, you have a site or something that you've built. So I think it definitely moved me. And I think the more I just kept looking, and this is a few years ago, so this is not now. It was like 2017, let's say.
Oh, okay.
There were not many. I kept just researching tools, being like, there has to be a tool or something like this I'm looking for. I saw a lot. I think the biggest innovation or the only thing people were really talking about was maybe Muckrack because it was like a newer,
Hmm.
better version
Sure.
of Cision. So we saw, but really it was just databases. And I was like, well, there's not much. You can give me 1,000 email addresses, but I still don't know what to do.
Right.
I needed
And
some
there's definitely
direction.
like a lot you shouldn't do when you
Yes,
have
but,
a
like, how
thousand.
to craft a pitch, like,
Yeah.
what goes into that, what to think about, how to do this, so, like, the content creation aspect wasn't there, the direction, the guidance, and then the matchmaking, I was like, "How am I" there's tons, and I think back then too, when we were looking more even legacy media, we thought there was a lot of media to weed through and figure out who's working where and, which ones to contact, and today it's blown up, like, now we have,
Hmm. Yeah.
we have all the independent media, we have people like we have the newsletters and the podcasts, and so, like, this whole new generation of media that we have to somehow keep up with, and
Yeah.
that's what's gotten, really cumbersome.
Yeah, I do feel like, it's funny you say about getting 10,000 emails all at once or whatever these databases, a lot of potential. But I think that the dumbest and easiest thing to do with that is to kind of like spam people essentially, right? Like, okay, I
Mhm,
could send my pitch to a whole bunch of different people. But I think what is probably required, certainly required, and was really hard for the longest time was finding of from those 10,000, what are the 5, 10, 15 that might actually
mhm.
this would actually be a service to them to have my pitch. But
Exactly, because if you have a market, let's say, like, let's say 1,000,000 customers, like, maybe, yes, you're gonna do cold email marketing because that's gonna work, and you can kinda blast you can blast
right,
some
sure.
emails. And that worked. We've done that too. But I think if it's 1 in media relations, 2, let's say investor relations, and 3, maybe like retail. I don't know. Like if there's some like bigger players in your space, I do think, and even if there's a lot of them, it takes some crafting and actual human element um, to land that connection and maintain and keep that connection with that
Right,
person.
but it's all about this is where I think AI comes in, right? Because it's about like where do I direct that human element? Like I don't know. Like I see a list of 10,000, I can sort of narrow it down by this or that or whatever and there's keywords and tags. Of course, it's not ever raw. But then you once you get really down to it, like you want that layer of AI on top of it that gives you that more sophisticated take on things
Mhm.
and who and what and aligns with the messaging you have and then
Exactly. Yeah, and so
surfacing that.
so AI been able to now take this database, okay, come back to me with the best results for my business or for a certain pitch or a certain announcement I'm making. Help me create this list. Like that's been next level. And that's something that I think all of us are very fortunate to have, and we don't have to hire minions and interns and hire junior assistants to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Same with media monitoring, like those things have come a long way and AI has played a huge impact in that. But I think too, it's AI is still helping like streamline our workflow. There's obviously still, and I believe will always be a human element. Uh,
Yeah, how much responsibility is on the journalists themselves to kind of like make sure it's totally clear, at least reasonably clear, like what their area is, how they want to be pitched, the kinds of things they would respond to from the get-go. Because I do feel like, that's often a complaint, like, hey, I'm getting something totally, outside my realm. But at the same time, a lot of reporters, like they're not pigeonholed to one exact thing. If you're like a tech columnist, for example, you probably write about a whole bunch of different things.
Great.
So anyway, I guess what is the role of the journalist in this to ensure that relationship, and that the highway, whether it's one lane or two way, is working as best as it can?
Right. So the first thing I heard, and this was years ago when I was researching this, is that journalists are inundated with irrelevant emails. And you're right,
Hmm.
because people are just pitching at random, at blast. Although it used to be that, if you remember, that like journalists really did have some of them, and some of them still do, like had a very specific beat. I think nowadays
Yeah.
there are a bit more generalists writers out there, but they're still according. So you don't want to send, someone that does the fashion column at GQ, like a food item maybe or something, so like there's definitely
Hmm.
still lanes they have. But they do, like back then they were getting 500 to 1,000 email pitches a day. Some of them,
Oh,
like
I
top,
remember.
top tier media and authorities are getting 500 to 1,000. Some of them say they get a pitch a minute. They can't physically read all of them, which is why they sift through and see people they know or see things that poke out. But they also have a lot of FOMO. They're like, what if I miss something really good, that I just can't read. I have to do a bulk delete. So
Hmm.
now with AI, I think, well, two sides. I think some of it is led to more email blasting, unfortunately.
Hmm.
But I do think there are some good systems out there, hopefully, including ours, that are helping people target the right journalists, and be able to, send more relevant contact their way. Um,
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. I feel like with AI, there's not only two ways you can go to, but oversimplify it. It's like, oh, I can scale, I can spam
Mhm.
even more, I can, play the numbers game another two or three orders of magnitude, and then maybe get some more stuff. But the other way, again, is layering that intelligence so that you can, from the get go, really optimize, like, where that human attention's going. Like, okay, would it not be better to focus your efforts on just 3 to 5 people, even, and really nurture those relationships, and make sure that the value is so clear on both sides of it. Like, obviously, I think that's where we want to go.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what that press hook is sort of trying to facilitate, right?
Yep. Yeah, and we've tried, we just to test out the different uh ways you could pitch media and get response rates. We tried blasting. We tried
Hmm.
um certain amount of pitches, certain amount of time, certain amount of days. We've tested subject lines. We've tested email content using AI and not. We do find, yeah, that less is more always wins. We see that, if you're just blast emailing, your maybe email reply rates could be maybe 1 to 2%. Whereas on press hook, if you're doing I'm just saying examples are like 10 maybe pitches a week, they're getting 17% response rates, so there's a larger response rate happening. And I think too, and the media catch on just like we do with our emails. You see, oh, um, we did use AI for a bit to say like, oh, we see that you've written an article like this before. Here's
Yeah.
our pitch. And that worked great for a while because that was our tactic. But we had to do it manually, use AI. But now it's caught on, so now you have to move on to a new tactic.
What is the new tactic? My listeners desperately
That's
want
the
to
secret
know.
sauce.
They got to get a subscription, I
That was
guess.
the last one, though. That was the last one that worked. But I do think people are, and I think even when you are just writing a one-off pitch, I do think that using AI helps with your, like, the content, the structure of the pitch, but still adding something personal, especially if the person can connect to something you saw about them. I mean, obviously that'll go a longer way.
Hmm. Totally. Um, so is there a sort of certain category of media and PR that Press Hook really, whether it focuses on or not, tends to be your customer?
Yes, we primarily focus on consumer products and brands. So physical goods like water bottles and clothing and pet goods. So anything that you can buy, pretty much, that's physical. That's what we decided on. We really focus on consumer lifestyle media. Reason being, well, one, we started in 2020, 21 during COVID,
Hmm.
so
A lot of buying going on.
Yeah, we had to figure out a initial market. And it's big, and I think that there's a lot of obviously like press opportunities for more for consumer brands than for, let's say, B2B and some other industries. Not to say we don't want to expand one day, but I do think like this is our target now. It's big, it's growing. And the help of a lot of like e-commerce and affiliates have definitely obviously helped
Nice.
this
Well,
industry.
I'm doubly grateful for you making the time today. We're actually recording this like during CES, which is probably a pretty busy time of year for you and all your clients. Um,
Yes.
but it's I'm glad we're zeroing in on sort of the product space and the journalism that sort of goes on around that has recently been even more challenged around some Google algorithm changes. So there was a lot of consternation about, hey, if People Magazine is doing air purifier reviews and that's ranking higher than someone who's actually really specialized in that, that's not right. So Google made this change, and now a bunch of these legacy media outlets are actually being really hit hard about that. It's just sort of a reality. Like, what is your take on that, and how is it shifting PR strategies, if at all?
Yeah, and I'm kind of have a bit of mixed emotions about it, but obviously, but as in one way, it created a lot of jobs for a lot of writers, the ones we work with, gave them a lot of content to write about, and it was a win-win kind of for a while for both sides. The publications were making the affiliate commissions, our brands were getting more product, more press mentions and sales through this. But I do think that it started to get uh, too many players, too many bought up, where
Mm,
it was just an SEO war game. And no publication was really staying in their lane. So I think it just got out of control, maybe a little bit, with no guidelines. So, and I think too, I'm sorry too for the media that do journalists that do work at those publications, and
mm.
they might not have jobs or know what's going on. So it was a quick, like sudden move from
Yeah.
their standpoint. So yeah, I see parts of it, but I still think those publications in other ways will continue to do some e-commerce for sure.
Yeah, I feel like that shakeout combined with AI in general is going to create kind of a newer ecosystem. I imagine it's going to be. It's hard to say if it'll be smaller, but I can't see it not being smaller, at least for a little bit. Not, like because all of that stuff was predicated on the idea of SEO and being the top of the SERP, right? And if you no longer even have a SERP in the same way, what does that mean? Yeah, you have a summary. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to figure out ways to surface affiliate links and summaries and figure out attribution and who's getting what super thin slice of the pie now that it's being cut up in 100 different ways. But the whole idea of an AI summary, and it sort of tracks with what Google just did, right? Which is like, well, we don't want all the stuff, and we don't want 100 different sites. We want the definitive sites to tell us about this thing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, like I feel like that's going to create a new system of incentives, which probably means some of these programs might go away. I don't know. It's really hard to say because there are sort of general interest places like Wirecutter and whatever that have seen some success of certainly, but um, as a PR professional trying to get your stuff out there, uh, like how do you get away from the idea you're one and done? Like, okay, I got Wirecutter, now I'm done, and that's going to get surfaced in all these things. It feels like I don't, not saying that's the world. How do we avoid that world that there's like some more variety out there? I don't know.
Right. I
Putting
think
it
a
out
lot of
there.
us too, the publications, like they're very reliant, dependent on Google and some platforms for like too long, too much. Maybe they weren't
Hmm.
relying on their own platforms and channels and networks. So I see some people going back to uh, improving their own, and we're seeing the growth of like digital subscriptions, paywalls. Apple News has 125 million users a month. That's large. And that's where
Hmm.
people are generating news. Google also does a lot of our traffic I see, yes, can come through organic search, but also their discovery is getting a lot stronger. So how they're just discovering articles to people, we're seeing that a growth in that as well. But I think it's just another, it's something that everyone's figuring out and working around. So I think it's a big change, yes, and it'll have some definite, like, and it's had already some large impact on some publications, but as we all do when there's a new media channel or a change, like, people figure out how to maneuver and go to the next best spot, and that's where all the eyeballs are. So
Totally. Um, with respect to some of those new channels, come to think of it, so I also feel like, you actually talked about this earlier with Substack, YouTube influencers. We have TikTok influencers now. You
lemonade,
have,
everything,
sorry,
lemonade,
Lemonade,
lemonade. It's
Lemonade.
another TikTok version.
Okay, I got some googling to do after this.
Mhm.
But like, as someone trying to get their brand into all of these channels, to some, maybe not every brand fits with every channel, but I feel like there is a language to each of these platforms that is slightly different, if you sort of kind of know what I mean. Like, TikTok is sort of zany and creative, certainly, but not quite in the same way that YouTube is, which is a little more established and laid back. And that's I could go on and on. But how important is it for pitches to sort of match that energy? Is that a thing in as PR sort of thinks about this? Can AI, it's something AI could probably help with, but I also think about authenticity a lot. I actually just wrote about it in one of my newsletters, and like, what does that even mean in the age of AI when you have like fake profiles and all this kind of weird smokescreen, in addition to just the sheer volume of things. Yeah, I'm kind of sorry. I know it's a bit of a weird question, but it is, like, I think as a PR person who might be not only have their own language but a language of a bunch of clients, how do you sort of strive for that authenticity?
Right. Because I think it's too, yeah, you're trying to get the voice and tone of the brand, the client itself, who has their own branding. But then there's the branding of, like, the publication you're speaking to, and whether that's a Vogue or other kind of Condé Nast kind of publication, or a newsletter. I do think you kind of have to, and it's the same thing we do with, like, sales and BD. You're kind of trying to
Mm,
match the tone of the uh, of the outlet you're speaking to, and speak to them in their voice. And that's how, you're suggesting products or ideas or news or trends to them, is like you're having to speak to that voice and that, like, demographic. So I definitely think that's really important. I am seeing some stuff we're working on and elsewhere, looking at, like, kind of matchmaking that content creation as well.
nice. What do you think about just the general state of AI adoption in the industry, PR and media? Where's it at? I always sort of feel like my calibration is off on this because I immerse myself in AI, and then I come out of my bubble and I'm like, oh, a lot of people have just only played with ChatGPT, even though we're way beyond that in the on as far as insiders go. What's your sense?
I definitely think that you're probably at the top 1-2% of your knowledge, and I've
Mm,
been in your focus groups, and I know, in your course you're teaching, I think, there are some people that are very knowledgeable in the space and actually, like, utilizing it in different ways, in very, innovative ways, and I guess, like, testing things out, seeing what's working. I do think when I started in, let's say, this company in 2020, there was a really big pushback even on us as a tech platform in this space.
mm,
They thought that,
interesting.
PRs thought we were, like, taking their jobs, like, taking their clients from them. They didn't want to use us because they thought their clients would leave them. And for so long, we tried to say, like, no, we're not taking your clients. Like, we're a complement, not a replacement, necessarily, unless you're not doing anything or using any other tools. Maybe you're going to get left behind. But yeah, I think our job is to, like, remove some inefficiencies, and help people focus more on the strategy and creativity side. Um,
Nice.
and that's why it exists. But I feel like that's become a lot more acceptable lately. And the PR industry seems to have tenfold started just accepting new technologies, increasing their tech stacks, trying new things, understanding that they need to they need to try new things to keep up, or else they might, get left behind.
Yeah, it feels like I've taught a lot of teams, and it's there's always like a spectrum of knowledge, but I think the goal for the industry for AI, and how it affects any industry, is so that even the people with no knowledge or no aptitude for it can take advantage of it, right? So you essentially build smart tools that'll abstract away things like prompt engineering, so
Right.
that it just kind of like, I hate to use the word magically or whatever, but it'd be like, there's sort of a smarter handshake between whatever the person's doing and whoever they're trying to reach, or
Hmm.
the goal they're trying to achieve.
Right.
Hopefully, like, we're talking agents now, and that's supposed to be the big thing this year.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts on agents at all, or like what you've sort of seen out there, either for your work personally or press hook?
Yeah, and we're definitely like experimenting with some, and see some other even clients coming in developing their own, wanting to come
Hmm.
in and use them on our platform. So that's been fun and interesting. Again, I think the agents can help. They can help with knowledge sharing, with education, with streamlining tasks, doing manual admin tasks. Helping maybe review a pitch. I think they can give really good like evergreen ideas of, here's things that you could pitch this month, to X
Yeah.
Media. And I saw your examples today in your newsletter, that is actually like showing here's some journalists and even some of their emails. We're still checking. I don't think it's 100% accurate yet, but
Yeah, yeah.
still
No,
like we're
it's not.
seeing that. We're seeing that, and it's wow. You're like,
Yeah.
wow, that's what I do. That's my job. But again, I think it helps do some of those more manual, like, tedious efforts. And, they're still
Mhm.
good to do. And you're still going to have to do some of them. You can't like just take everything for face value. You need to check your work and what you're doing. But I think it helps us, like, again, lean into more creativity and more strategy, and I think that's what PR people are really good at, and that's their skill. When I first came to this industry, I just could not believe how much admin work they were doing, and that's what,
Mhm.
you're paying for as a client, is just this admin work that was getting done. So, in looking at, uh, PR is really trying to do something, let's say, like against the great grain or building a great story. I do still think the PR content coming out can be a bit predictable,
Yeah.
but I'm looking forward to seeing how that progresses too over time.
Yeah, I really love the idea of an agent taking over my computer at night, because they have these computer use things now that, essentially let the AI act as almost a person as it's sort of navigating your computer and the web.
Okay.
And while there's obviously dangers with that, and they have to sort of make them really dumb in some ways, so they can't do everything. That idea, that it could access the same things as a human would, is in some ways even more powerful than like having APIs connected to everything, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, because then you don't need the APIs, right? You can actually sort of quickly adjust a way of doing something if there isn't that sort of direct access to the data. You can just sort of surf to their website or what have you. Really powerful stuff. Anyway, I'm getting sort of on a little bit of a digression there
No,
on
I'm
what I'm
really
excited
excited
about with
about
with
that and see
AI.
where that goes. And I think it's
Yeah,
going to happen pretty quickly, honestly.
cool. Well, let's talk a little bit more about you and how you use AI. Like, what was, we talked about agents, but what are you doing with in your personal workflows with whatever you're using?
Um, I mean, from a business ownership, an admin standard, I think there's a lot of ways I use it, honestly. And whether that's maybe redoing a legal contract or business contract, employment contract here and there, just to kind of fix it, not have to pay, $700 an hour for a lawyer to review it. Although I know I need to get that checked at some point. I will say there's a
Yeah,
lot of
at
ways
some point.
it helps me get a lot of business done that used to take me a lot of time or be really expensive. However, I use it. I mean, I use it all over the place. It
Mhm.
helps me, uh, you know, again, if we're creating a blog article and it's making it more SEO optimized, or even, writing an article for me and selecting content, and I go through it. Um, sometimes it honestly talks back to me and I'm like, did I tell you that? Like, how do you know that? And it remembers. It's like, yes, you told me this. I'm like, oh, wow. It remembers more than my brain does that I'm
Right.
inputting to it at times. But we'll put in clients and see what strategies it pulls out. God, I
Have
have
you
to
done
think.
any advanced voice mode stuff?
I've done some. Yeah. Yes.
I feel
Turbogene.
like New
More for just
Yorkers,
my own content that I'm writing and
yeah,
to come up with ideas, and so I can just talk a little bit more like me.
yeah, that's cool. I feel like a lot of AI influencers talk up advanced voice mode, and they're always like, "Yeah, when you're in your car on a long car ride, just try it out." And I'm just like, "Yeah, what are New Yorkers supposed to do? Just try it out in the
Right.
subway car? There's not even a connection half the time." So I always feel like New Yorkers are a little bit like left behind on some, not not left behind, but they have to work around that stuff. They'll have to, as they're walking, and they're going to have to do it, and just have to be crazy people or looked at
Yeah.
that way
And it's like,
when
before you guys
talking to New
start
York.
using AI to do like self-driving cars, like, can you just fix our subway system? You just make it work and on time and more clean and more sophisticated.
Sweet. So what's next for Press Hook?
So I'm excited, honestly, about this year. As I said, I feel like there's been definitely a resurgence in the demand of PR and media, and I think too, it's this huge network. We've seen of media like yourself and niches and experts coming out. Obviously, just the growth in the newsletter space, the podcast space, seeing a lot of journalists that we previously worked with, start their own media company. So I think that's been really exciting just because it
Mm,
opens so many more doors, and especially for like smaller brands that can't afford, huge agencies and huge PR campaigns. I think it's just making us so much more accessible. The content's definitely getting more raw and authentic. Obviously, we love that. I think the technology, honestly, I think even what we've built today, I thought it would take us another 5 years to build. So
huh?
I'm very grateful to AI and what it has done. And even though I'm not an AI native company, because we started it a little bit before, I think we're going to see, just more innovation and just more, it getting a lot more. I think you said too, just getting a bit more like trustworthy um,
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
how we're using it. Again, if we're using it in self-driving cars and other things, we're going to have to start to trust and accept it more. But it's getting more accurate. It's you know it, it's kind of been in like beta mode. It felt like a couple of years ago, and it's kind of coming out of that and really advancing. So I'm excited. It makes our tech roadmap very difficult because there's so many things you want to
Mm,
build that but in one way, there's a lot we want to build, but we can test things a lot quicker than before. In terms
mm.
of deploying something, deploying a new feature and testing it, we can build it quicker with less resources. So I'm just excited about going back to that startup mode. That's like, hey, we have an idea, let's test it, let's get it out, let's see what happens.
Nice.
When normally, as you grow, it gets harder to be that nimble as a company.
Right. Yeah. Get a little tech debt.
Hmm.
But AI, like helps you pivot a little more. I will say I highly recommend you clip out that being grateful for AI for when the robots do take over. So you'll have some evidence to point out of like,
There
hey,
we
I'm
go.
one of the good ones.
Exactly.
Michelle, this has been fabulous. Thanks so much.
No, thank you. I wish, this newsletter was out years ago when I was first getting started. So I'm grateful to have experts like yourself and others that helps me read and learn more every day about the industry and what's new and what's working and changing. So appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for the kind words. We'll be sure to time travel one of my editions back to you in 2021, 2020, or something like that.
There we go.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Michelle Songy. If you want to check out Presshook, you can head on over to presshook.com. And if you like what you heard, please just take a minute to leave a rating or review for the Media Copilot in your podcast app. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Media Copilot newsletter. And hey, check out our comprehensive course on AI for media and PR professionals at mediacopilot.ai. Be seeing you in the future.